My name is Cyndi Grobmeier, and I'm the president of the Maddog Strong Foundation. Our mission is to raise awareness of the need for everyone to become registered as an organ and tissue donor. Since April is National Donate Life Month, we've decided to bring you a weekly video series entitled Discussing Donations, where each week we'll speak to a different expert in the field of organ and tissue donation and get their insights. This week's topic on Discussing Donation is donor family support, and our guest is my friend and donation specialist with Gift of Hope, Shannon Wyatt. Gift of Hope is the Organ Procurement Organization, or OPO, for most of the state of Illinois and part of Northwest Indiana. An OPO manages the organ donation process from start to finish. Shannon's job as a donation specialist is to work with grieving families. It's a difficult job. She approaches these families at possibly the worst moment of their lives to provide support and information to help them determine if they want to donate their loved ones' organs and tissues. It's a job that requires extensive training. It's also a job that requires a big heart, which Shannon has. I'm very honored to have Shannon as our guest today. So today's topic on Discussing Donation is donor family support, and our guest is my good friend and donor specialist with Gift of Hope, Shannon Wyatt. Hi, Shannon.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning. So Shannon, can you tell us a little bit about your job with Gift of Hope?
So I started at Gift of Hope 3 years ago this month, actually. And my job is donation specialist. So I am the one that meets with the families, provide family support, inform them either about their loved one's wish to be an organ donor or to ask them if they would consider donation. For their loved one's legacy to live on. I also am just providing support during their grieving process, explaining things to them that maybe they don't understand what the doctors told them, just really being a support for them and just walking them through the journey of donation.
That sounds like an amazing job, Shannon, and a difficult one at that. Mm-hmm. I know from getting to know you that in your first life, you were an athletic trainer. How did you go from being an athletic trainer to working in the field of organ and tissue donation?
So first of all, I did donate a kidney 12 years ago in March 19th, 2008. And I did athletic training for 11 years. I loved it. I loved working at the high school. And actually, probably about 5 years before I started working at Gift of Hope, I looked at Gift of Hope's website. I was driving home one day and saw the office and was curious as to what it was. So I looked it up and I was like, man, that would be so cool to work for Gift of Hope someday, but I wasn't ready to leave the high school kids yet. So just kind of stayed in that. And then when I was looking for a career change, I also really enjoyed athletic training. And before that, I was a social work for 3 years and I enjoyed that. So for me, it was thinking every job I've had, I really enjoyed and it wasn't like work to me. So what am I passionate about? And I seriously was sleeping. And in the middle of the night, I sat up in bed and I went, organ donation. And I went right back to bed. And then the next day I applied for the job at Gift of Hope. And I was thinking like how passionate I am about organ and tissue donation and just the importance of it and being a living donor myself, having family members that have passed away as well. Like I just thought like, this is probably the perfect role for me. And there are some days where I can't believe that even was my former life. And I think about like what took me so long to get to this point as well. When I was in high school, I wrote my persuasive speech on becoming an organ and tissue donor when he passed away and had no idea that like all this would lead to where I am today.
That is quite a journey, Shannon. I love that story. You could tell me that story 10 times and it never grows old. And thank you for being a donor. That's also really amazing. How did you become a living donor? And how is your donor doing now, your donor recipient doing now, and you?
So I guess like the living, again, I remember writing my speech in high school. I do remember it reminded me probably like a couple months ago, Gift of Hope had posted a story about Nicholas, the family that was vacationing in Italy, and their son was tragically killed, and they decided to donate his organs. And thinking about that, it reminded me, like, that was probably my initial thought about organ donation, because I was probably like 8 or 9 years old, and I remember thinking like how amazing it was that he was able to save these other people's lives in that tragedy. So that was definitely probably the spark of it. When I was 12, my uncle's girlfriend informed me that you could donate a kidney and still live. There was a young girl in our church who was probably 9. She had a lot of special needs, was fostered, and her foster dad was always sharing these prayer requests about her. And I remember they were saying that she went into kidney failure, and that's when my uncle's girlfriend told me that you could donate a kidney and still live. And at 12 years old, I remember thinking, I want to donate my kidney to her. And of course, there's no hospital that's going to let a 12-year-old do it. I was 26 when I did it, and that was a big deal. And so, just kind of went on with my life. And one day I was home from work. It had to have been like a Monday where there's no school or something. And I remember Oprah had this one kid sitting there, and there were like all these people next to him. And his teacher donated his kidney to him, and then his wife did it anonymously, and then her brother did it anonymously, and then his wife did it anonymously, like this chain of people that donated a kidney to other people. And they were all saying how they went back to work a month later. They felt great. And I was just thinking, like, if they could do it, I could do it. And it brought me back to that thought when I was 12, about wanting to donate. So I went into work the next day and I said, who wants to donate a kidney with me? You only need one. And they all thought I was crazy. And the lady said, well, I would donate if it was someone I knew. So maybe wait till it's someone you know. And so, of course, my faith is really important to me. So I started praying about it. And 2 weeks later, my friend called me and told me that her brother's best friend was in the ICU with kidney failure. And I remember thinking, no way. Like, more like, there's no way God answers prayers that fast kind of a thing. Yeah. And so I ended up running into that guy maybe like a month later at a graduation party. So my friend Brian, he was actually my prom date. It's his like good friend from high school. We had gone to this party together, and I remember sitting there talking with him, and I asked him what his blood type was, and he said A positive, and I said, me too. And I said, let me know if you ever need a kidney and I'll donate to you. And he also looked at me like I was crazy. And probably, I would say maybe 6 months after that, Brian had called and told me that he was on dialysis and in the hospital again. And I just kept thinking, I have to try. I can't go on with my life knowing that I'm the same blood type as this guy and I don't even try. Like, at least if I try, if it works, it works. If it doesn't, at least I tried. And so I called Brian up, like, you're going to think I'm crazy, but I need to get tested. And the next day he and I went to go get tested. Tommy is his name. And his brother and cousin did not match, and they found out like pretty quickly, like 2-3 days, that they didn't match. So Brian and I both get tested, and it took weeks for them to call us. And it's just funny how I think God blinds us sometimes to things, because I kept thinking the lab was lazy and they weren't doing their job, excuse me. And really the whole time it was because we kept testing like to match. So they did more and more and more testing. And so I remember they called me and she asked to speak to me, and she's like, I just want to let you know, like, we took his real name is Song, but he goes by Tommy. So they're like, we took Song's blood, we did your blood, and like we did this, and and you are compatible. Like, it was like a game show. So I remember calling Brian. I was like, you need to answer your phone, like they're trying to call you. And so he called me back, and he's like, yeah. So she like says this stuff to me, and she says like they took my blood and they did his blood and they did all this stuff. And then she's like, you are compatible. So we both matched and decided that since it's his friend, he would go first. And if it didn't take or it didn't work out, I'd be the next person. And Brian was not able to be a donor. That took like a long time for testing. And then eventually I, started my testing like almost 2 years later. I found out that I was the official match. And then March 19th, 2008 was when we did our surgery, and I remember they gave me like the calming drugs beforehand. They wheeled me down the hall, and I remember saying to them, "Let's donate some kidneys and rock and roll." And then I turned and looked at them and said, "This stuff works fast." And then all I saw was the double doors, and then that was it. So I would do it all over again. If I had like 10 more kidneys, I'd still donate 9 of them.
It's crazy how long the process took as a living donor, which of course is different from, what you deal with on a regular basis with
Right.
deceased donors.
Well, some of that process too was the recipient. So he like needed to lose a certain amount of weight. He needed to go get his teeth checked by the dentist. Like there are all these other little processes that he needed to complete as well. Plus they didn't know which kidney they were going to take of mine. So I had to get more testing done. And I was just like so annoyed that it took so long that I kept bugging them, of course. And every time that I would finally be like, okay, God, like if you want me to do this, like this is going to work. I'm not going to worry. The next day they'd call and like schedule something. So
Wow.
I just really had to fully surrender that control.
Yeah, that can't be easy.
Right.
Do you think that the fact that you are a living donor, does that inform and help you deal with your families, or do you not bring it up? How does that influence you in your job?
I think, I feel like I totally get where these families are coming from. I have empathy for them and knowing that they lost a loved one and know what that feels like. A couple of times my mom was widowed twice and my grandparents died shortly after that. And but I also know what it's like to give life to someone. When I was younger, after my second dad died, I had struggled with a lot of depression and just sad thoughts and everything. And I always tell people that Tommy saved my life. I didn't really save his. Tommy saved my life. And I think about that because it's just this weird feeling that I can't describe of like knowing that I saved that person's life. He unfortunately needs another kidney. It lasted 5 years and he's back on dialysis, and he doesn't want another living kidney donor. He wants it from someone deceased. And but he like it's amazing that I still gave him that 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I would never think of taking my own life again, knowing that I gave life to somebody else, or at least extended his life a little bit. So I think for me, every family is different that we work with. Every family grieves differently. Sometimes I do bring it up. I think if they are kind of questioning the process or questioning if this is the right thing to do, or because it's so hard to get a family in that grief in that moment to see the future like 6 months ahead afterwards, mm-hmm. or a year afterwards. And so kind of painting that picture for them. And I don't know, I think I brought it up with you guys. I don't remember how or why, but and that's the thing, is like I don't remember who I tell or who I don't. I think it's usually if they're struggling with something, then I try to help them know that this is a really good thing to do.
So it sounds like a big part of your job is being able to relate to the donor families where mm-hmm. they're at in that moment. And that's of course going to be different from family to family. So what are some of the range of like emotions and ways what are some of the different reactions you've received from donor families through the years?
Oh, geez. A lot of families are obviously very sad. Some are angry. That's a stage of grief as well. You just have to learn not to take it personal. I think, this one lady, she said some not very nice words to me. And, when I explained to her that she's going to have more time with her daughter, that her daughter's life isn't going to end right here in this room. By the end of the conversation, she was hugging me and crying and like so thankful for me, and reached out to me a couple weeks later. I think it's the hardest part is when you have families that are grieving and they say no because of the grief, or they say no because they don't have the education to understand and they're not willing to let you explain the process to them. Mm-hmm. And that's where it's heartbreaking for me, and knowing like, I know you're grieving in this moment and I want to help you see the future. And this is how the future is going to help you if you can say yes to this. But some families just won't give us that opportunity. And those are the hard days when you have someone that you know for a fact is saying no, for a reason that is just based on emotions for that moment.
And we know from our experience that having your loved one be a donor can be really healing and helpful. And so how does what have you seen organ donation do for families in the long run? You know, you get to see the families in that moment, but I know you keep in touch with some, and certainly Gift of Hope, that's a big part of their mission. So what do you see as being sort of the benefits of organ donation for the donor families in the long run?
I think even just there's a change in families from the day that you are with them in the hospital to even like 2 weeks later when you call them to give them that outcome email of where their loved one's gifts went and who they were able to help. There's such a shift. And I think it's because, you know, part of the grieving process is you're in so much denial that this person has even passed away. You're tired with the hospital, the process takes too long or whatever it may be. And, you know, for many, the funeral service is what can give people some form of closure. You know, so I think just seeing the difference in shift from after the funeral is over, they start the process of moving on with their life without their loved one. But, you know, I think the most favorite part, and you know this story from inviting me to Gift of Hope to make the memory boxes that we make. You know, I just remember I walked in that room, I couldn't find you, so I just sat down, but then I heard you. I knew you were behind me. And the woman that I sat next to, you know, we don't know all of our coworkers. And so I asked the ladies in front of me, like, do you work here? They did. We talked about that. The woman next to me is like, how has donation benefited you? And she said, well, I'm a recipient family. And I had a different family that met their recipient coincidentally at that memory box making thing, which we had talked about. And so as she's sitting there explaining this story to me, she's like, we met my dad's donor family at this event. And I instantly started crying because I knew it was a family that I had worked with. And I asked her and confirmed with her. And she was just so thankful for the work that we do. And for me, getting that family to the place of acceptance to donate, you know, their son's organs in order to help someone like her dad survive and live so that she could still have her dad. So seeing that benefit, you know, or seeing that there was another family that I had that said no at first. I got them to a place to say yes. Their son was able to help a young person with a heart, liver, and kidney transplant that was in the news. And what was so crazy to me was like, I was at a different hospital. I walked by these people. I had this feeling, it's like a donor feeling, that I knew that they probably were, you know, transplant recipients. All I did was say hi. And then the next day I saw their picture in the paper, that they both received triple transplants. And I was like, I walked by that guy and like helped save his life. I didn't even know, you know, and he walked by me and had no idea who I was. And, you know, it's just like to see someone alive and to see the families, you know, and I think that's where some of these families that really struggle, I have these stories to share with them. Like, yes, this family totally understands where you came from. They're in the same position, but this is going to help you so much in the long run. And sharing those stories and helping them get there, I think that's what makes my job so rewarding, you know. And then I think too, just, you know, you experience this, just that like I meet these families, I've never met them before in my life, and I'm meeting them on the worst day of their life, and yet they trust me to let me in.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. I think a lot of people who are watching this may not realize when you say you've never met some of your coworkers, for example, it's because you predominantly work in the field, and that's where we met you. So we met you the day our daughter Maddie received her brain death diagnosis after her acute asthma attack. And I know you said we're kind of unusual in that we actually requested Gift of Hope to come speak with us because we knew Maddie really, the organ donation was really important to her. And I won't tell the story. I'll let you tell the story about how we ended up having you as our donor family specialist instead of possibly somebody else who had been at the hospital sort of waiting, right?
Yeah. So there was a colleague that was at the hospital the day before, ready to speak to you. And we had gotten information from the hospital staff that you guys weren't ready to speak with Gift of Hope yet, but you knew we were on the unit. And we typically, sometimes our dispatches to the hospitals are random. Sometimes they are because whoever dispatches us knows that so-and-so is best for this family and so-and-so is best for this family. And my managers, knowing that I worked at a high school for 11 years and have a heart for high school kids, which they're very hard to reach at times and to make an impact in their life. They knew Maddie's age, and we had also gotten information that there was a sister, an older sister too. So they sent me for that. Typically, if there is, a teenager or a family that has teenagers, I request to be there just because I know I can connect well with those kids. And so they sent me, and I do remember seeing Jim walk the halls and had heard that her coach was there. And I just waited, for everything. And you guys came in. I don't remember everything. I just remember we both cried a lot, and I do cry with my families, but I think I cried the most with you guys. And I just remember after that day, I just had this feeling that I wasn't going to be done with you that day. Like, I just felt like this is one of those families that I feel like, are going to be connected with for a while. And then I think it was the next day we had the flag raising ceremony, or was it 2 days later?
I think it was the next day. Yeah.
I think, and what really hit me was I remember being at the flag raising ceremony and helping you guys gather all the other kids that were there and explain everything and like getting the appropriate staff in place for whatever. And I remember telling you that I was going to take pictures so you wouldn't have to worry about that. And I remember at one point, you don't even know this part yet, but at one point, I was kind of at a distance from you guys. And I think someone must have asked you if they could take pictures. And you're like, oh no, Shannon's got that. Shannon will do it. And like, just the way that you're like, we're good. It made me feel like, wow, this woman is like really trusting me with everything. And I took that burden off of her. She's just like, okay, she's got, and the way you said it to these people made it sound like they knew who I was. And so I think that was like the clicking moment for me. Like, wow, this family's like, I'm stuck with them. And I'm glad I could be this person to help them. And then, I knew, so for me personally, going to funerals is really difficult for me because I'm so empathetic and because of my family history with everyone passing away. But I knew I wanted to go to the wake. So I did that. And, that was really obviously important for me. And again, still the same thing. Like, I just knew you guys were going to be around for a while. And I think what the saddest part for me was just like, I know you guys so well, and yet I've never met Maddie until, she really passed away. And that's really hard. Yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully we've kind of helped you get to know her a little bit, but
we always say that if I was her trainer, she would be in my training room, but
she would have loved having you. You would have gotten along so well. Well, I think it says a lot about Gift of Hope, and which, for those of you that don't know, Gift of Hope is Illinois' organ procurement organization. So they're the ones that handle the organ donation process from start to finish throughout most of Illinois and part of Northwest Indiana. And I think it just speaks volumes to Gift of Hope that they actually think about who they're sending to speak with the families. Mm-hmm. I mean, you've definitely been a big support system for Sam. And I think not to say that any other specialist wouldn't have been equally as good, but yeah, there was definitely a connection there, and clearly somebody saw that, and I think that's pretty amazing that that's part of the overall mission of Gift of Hope as well.
Yeah, it's not just you go here, you go there. Sometimes it is like that depending on the day, but for the most part, it's a thought out process.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because we want to provide the best support for our families.
And you guys do.
Possible.
Yeah, you guys do. So one last question. Since you speak so well to teens, if there are young adults out there who are thinking about possibly a career in medicine or in some related medical field, what would you say to them about getting into the field of organ and tissue transplantation?
Oh, if you think about it now, do it. Because that is one thing that I kind of regret, that I never, as much as I was passionate about this field, I just never thought I could have an occupation or a career in it.
Yeah.
Was considering going to nursing school right after I graduated from undergrad. I actually didn't get accepted, but
wow.
And I kind of was like, I'm just going to apply to this one, and if I get accepted, great. If I don't, then that's fine. And my thought was going to nursing school to be a nurse to help in the orthopedic world, because that's all I knew was orthopedics. And I look back on that, and sometimes I wish that maybe I did go back to nursing school, because it would be so cool to work in organ transplant on that side. But now I get to work it in a different way, so it's still full circle. So I guess if you have a thought about that, just go for it and do it, and still just educate people. You guys, I don't know if you can shadow us, but I'm sure there's a way that you can learn from us and know the truths about organ donation, and not the myths, and just jump right in. Learn how to get your feet in to do it. I mean, heck, it's been since I was 12. So
that's amazing.
It finally led to the right direction and path, so.
Well, thank goodness your path led you there, because we're definitely blessed to have you in our life. Thank you.
Likewise.
Well, that was our first episode of discussing donation. I would like to thank Shannon Wyatt for being here with us today. And we're going to sign off now so she and I can have some fun chats about some other things. So join us next week. Thank you, Shannon.
Bye.
Bye.
This message brought to you by the Maddog Strong Foundation. For more info, please go to our website at maddogstrong.org.